This is Jim Cook with a video update regarding some upcoming initial public offerings that are going to be hitting the market this year. Now, there has been a lot of hype around the technology sector, specifically revolving around the concept of AI, what it may be able to do, and a lot of investment money being thrown at it right now. We have likely 2 and maybe 3 initial public offerings, or IPOs, that are going to be happening this year. And I wanted to give a little context around it because these things are going to hit the news likely because of the hype that is already around this sector. Now, do note very clearly that nothing that I say here should be construed as buy, sell, or hold advice regarding any individual securities that I'm bringing up. This video is for educational purposes only, and you should view it as that. I'm meaning to provide an update on perspective, which I think is good to have when things get a little, crazy, as they have been as of late. So the expectation right now is that in the summertime, that SpaceX will have its initial public offering, that around the fall time, give or take, that Anthropic will have its initial public offering, and perhaps OpenAI will also have an initial public offering this year, even though it is not, at the time of this recording, filed for one. So why would a company want to go public? What is the purpose of this? And what does it mean to you? So the process of going public is one of the ways or channels that a company can use to raise money. When a company is looking to expand and they need capital to do so, there's typically 2 options. They either give away part of the ownership of the company, or they ask for a loan. So in the case of a loan, if I wanted a loan for a large amount of money, the problem is that sometimes the lenders would say, hey, that's just too much money. We can't give that to you. So that's not great. The other side is, even if they could give it to you, we've got interest payments to talk about, and principal payments too. So giving away the equity in a company is one of the ways that people like to use, or companies will use to give like a booster shot to be able to launch up and say, now we have a lot of capital. But what's the purpose of the capital? Well, in this case, at least based on what Elon Musk has been hinting towards, it would seem that he would like SpaceX to be able to deliver and build and perhaps operate data centers in space. Now, this seems a little crazy because most of what we've grown up with has been buildings that have operated right here on Earth. However, with his reusable rocket technology, the cost to deliver basically weight or mass up to space has come down dramatically compared to the days of the old space shuttle that would be launching things up, a new satellite here or what have you. So because of that cost reduction, it actually means that there is some viability to this concept. In addition to that, with data centers being, well, let's just say a little bit of a resource hog and creating some noise issues and demanding a lot of water, that more and more communities have said, hey, I don't like this. I don't want a data center near me. And that becomes a challenge, especially when we're talking about accessing things like water and or power and how that affects people around us. Well, in space, that wouldn't necessarily happen. So this is part of the idea of what, at least from what I can tell, Elon is trying to do with SpaceX, is that he is saying, if we put data centers in space, you don't have that problem. It's really easy to cool things because basically almost absolute zero outside, right? Very little heat itself. And you could use solar panels like we do to power the International Space Station to, in essence, generate power out there directly from the sun. It is definitely an interesting thing to think about. And it is kind of space age or science fiction coming to life. Now, with this, here's what happens. People get really excited and they think like, I got to be part of this. Well, that is part of the excitement rush that could happen with anything that might seem fantastic at the time. And remember, not a buy, sell, or hold recommendation in this video. So what really happens with an IPO in terms of getting access to this kind of stuff? Well, I can tell you that for the average person, you won't have access to this. The whole purpose of a company going public is to create public access. If you wanted to own shares of this or any of the companies in the past that had gone public, you had to purchase on the private side. And typically, that meant that you either had to have a lot of money or you had to have access through some kind of what's called institutional investment channels. Institutional meaning not everyday people. So even though you will hear that a certain number of shares might be offered to the, let's call it public, it's probably not going to be the public like you and me. It's probably going to be a select few people that happen to have the capital to be able to actually make a difference in the initial raising of this money that Elon is looking to do with SpaceX. So how does that affect your portfolio kind of moving forward? Well, for some of you, you may actually already own some SpaceX, depending on which mutual funds you are exposed to. Inside of the advisory platform that I use, at least one of the holdings, if not two, actually have some of this pre-IPO holdings in there. But remember that this too is a diversified mix of investments. And so we should not expect that any one holding inside of these multiple investments, amidst all the investments, should be anything that was what is considered a concentrated holding. Could you have exposure? Yeah. But what's more likely to happen in the future? Here's the way it'll likely play out. There will be an initial public offering. At the time, depending on how much excitement is there, the pricing of this will either go higher or lower than what the target was. This is part of testing the public's appetite and saying, here's how much money we want to raise. Now, to put stuff into space, you need a lot of money, so Elon's looking for a lot of money. Whether or not that happens is yet to be seen, but time will tell. Then, after the IPO, now shares have been basically sold from, if you will, some of those original founding areas and distributed into the public zone. In the public zone, there will now be a stock ticker for SpaceX, and it will trade or be bought and sold by regular people like us and investment managers who are managing your mutual funds and exchange-traded fund investments. Do not anticipate that I will be directly participating with this inside of your account because typically I am looking at investing and not gambling. And while some managers do believe that SpaceX could be a potential positive investment, there are others that don't. And it's this exact diversity of thought that helps us have a more balanced risk exposure inside of your portfolios. So all in all, remember that even though there's going to be hype around this, and even though there's going to be news play, and there's going to be activity, and people will be interested to see what the stock did, that we are not chasing, like a gambler, a quick hit. We are looking for investments, which is more like planting orchards. If we plant orchards and the trees grow over time, eventually we look and we're like, wow, we have so many apple trees here, we can't eat all the apples. That is the good problem to have. What we didn't say is, I sold the farm to be able to buy a lottery ticket. I sure hope I win. That is the gambling method. So make sure that as you see news in these upcoming weeks, months, about these companies, especially if this tech excitement around AI continues, and it seems to be rather rampant, a relatively euphoric run forward. Could it be toward a cliff? Absolutely. Could it continue going for a while? Absolutely. Will there be some kind of rebalance, reckoning, retracement? 100%. That's what happens all the time. That's why we have averages for everything that's really great. We tend to have something that's not so great, and across time, this evens out to a certain pattern. Are we high right now? Yeah, I would say so. I believe it. But does that mean I think it's going to crash tomorrow? No, because I don't have a working crystal ball, and neither does anybody else. So given all this, understand the IPO method is to raise capital so a company might try to expand, even though it's sacrificing some ownership now, that it would allow it to grow faster, and therefore the ownership that was retained still had a healthy return on investment. From this, once it goes public, now public investors can participate in the chance that there is an increase across time of value if the growth actually happens and the public markets value that growth in a way that would increase share price. So there are some definitely, we'll call it subjective elements that can come into play. One thing to be certain of, though, is that with in these initial public offerings, when a market has been running hot and is very excited about stuff, do anticipate that this will create some volatility, meaning that it can go up and or down rapidly across shorter periods of time. With that expectation, if you've got any questions, please reach out to myself or Shelby to set up a meeting. I'm happy to talk about it. I hope this video was informative and helped give you a little scope about what's to come, kind of to be mentally and appropriately prepared. Until the next time, take care.